Joining us, Senior Fellow for Middle East and Africa Studies at the Council on Foreign Relations, Stephen Cook, and the President of Geopolitics and Foreign Policy Department at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Victor Cha. Victor, really good to have you, as always. The president kind of contradicted himself on Taiwan, said, initially they didn't really talk about it in the arms sale. And then he said they talked about it in great detail. No details beyond that. What is your understanding of where we stand with Taiwan?
Hi, Katie. Thanks very much. I think there has been no change in policy. I mean, at least that's certainly what Rubio tells us. Just before we got on the air, the Chinese Foreign Ministry released Wang Yi, the foreign minister's readout of the meeting, and I was trying to get to the parts about Taiwan where it looked like there was a very long and in-depth discussion, but that, in fact, there doesn't appear to be any change in policy. The president's press spray on the plane suggested there might be a change in arms sales. I just don't know about that. I think the United States has to sell arms to Taiwan. I mean, what Trump said notably was that the United States doesn't want to fight 8,000 miles away in Taiwan. And if that's the case, they have to sell arms to Taiwan to ensure that Taiwan can defend themselves. So the problem actually really is on the Taiwan side.
That could be the implication as well, right?
Sorry, I couldn't say that again. I missed you.
Well, if we don't want to fight 8,000 miles overseas and we're not willing to sell arms, does that imply that Donald Trump would be just willing to let China take Taiwan?
Oh, I certainly hope not. I mean, that would certainly be bad for our commitments all over the Indo-Pacific. It would be bad for our supply of semiconductors as well. I think this arms sale will go through. The problem is on the Taiwan side, they can't get a full defense budget passed on their side for weapons and for drones. So hopefully there isn't a change in policy. At least Wang Yi's readout didn't appear to suggest there was a major change.
Can you help me understand what President Xi meant when he said that if there is a disconnect on the Taiwan issue, there would be big consequences? Is there a translation issue there? Because I got a number of different versions of that readout.
Yeah, so my understanding of it, so it's not unusual in the sense that the Chinese have always come out with a strong unconditional statement on Taiwan with most U.S. presidents, not sort of as the opening statement as we saw with Trump, but we certainly saw it during Biden. Some of the experts say that the word conflict that he used had been used before, but that the Chinese version of translation of the word conflict was a stronger term than has been used in the past. In any event, this is a clear statement by Xi Jinping laying down sort of a red line in the sand with regard to Taiwan, that, perhaps he's trying to leverage what he sees as a stronger position given the president's difficulties in Iran.
What about Iran specifically? I mean, Victor, you just alluded to it. Stephen, is the president getting help from President Xi on Iran?
Well, according to the United States readout, the United States and China agreed that the Strait of Hormuz should not be militarized and there should be no toll. So if that's the case, then that is support of the American position. But there doesn't seem to be a Chinese commitment to lean on the Iranians when it comes to negotiations. According to the president, the Chinese have agreed not to sell weapons to Iran. The Chinese have not, as far as I know, Victor, I'm sure would know better, but as far as I know, have not released any statement that would confirm that they've agreed not to sell to the Iranians. And after all, they're selling components and air defense systems. So there is a way, at least a way around this. So I'm not sure that they got a lot on Iran. And I think the Chinese, while not wanting to get too involved directly, are happy to have the United States pinned down in the Gulf.
Let me play a little bit of Donald Trump talking about Iran's latest proposal. This is when he was on his way back from China. Let's listen.
Have you rejected the latest proposal from Iran, or where does that stand?
Well, I looked at it, and if I don't like the first sentence, I just throw it away.
What was the first sentence?
An unacceptable sentence. Because they have fully agreed, no nuclear, and if they have any nuclear of any form, I don't read the rest of it.
How do you understand that, Stephen? Does that mean we're closer to negotiations, farther apart? What's your sense?
Katie, we've talked about this before. It seems to me that we are exactly where we have been in the last 3 or 4 weeks. The Iranians proposing their maximal demands and the United States rejecting it and turning around and sending back U.S. maximal demands. It does not seem that the president is willing to come off his demand that the Iranians have no enrichment and no nuclear capability, and the Iranians say that they have a right to do it. So we are at square one, and the blockade remains in place. There's been very, very little movement, if any at all.
Oh, that's interesting. What about tariffs, Victor? Tariffs are a big deal here. We have imposed a lot of tariffs. We need the Chinese market for soybeans and the like. There was an announcement about beef, but what do you make of no talk of tariffs from the White House?
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I think the two have continued the truce that they've kind of declared since the meeting that took place in Korea late last year, in terms of U.S. Not increasing tariffs and China not using a chokehold on critical minerals. It was interesting. I thought that the president announced a very specific date for the next meeting when President Xi would come to Washington. He said September 24th. And that is before the supposed expiration of the truce on tariffs. So I think for many who are looking at this from the business or other perspectives, they can use that as a timestamp that most likely we'll see some sort of stability through till the end of September. But again, you just never know with regard to tariffs. The other thing I would say on the purchases is that to what Stephen said earlier, I agree. I don't think the president got anything from China with regard to Iran. I mean, for China to try to get Iran to open the strait, that's really difficult. So the best move by China is to deflect by saying, hey, I'll buy a whole bunch of soybeans. I'll buy Boeing airplanes. I'll buy all these other things. And then the president probably asked, as Stephen said, for stopping or drawing a red line with regards to weapons or intel, something along those lines. But I agree. I don't think he got anything on Iran.
Do you expect these deals to go through for the airplanes and the like? The Chinese haven't said anything about them.
Well, it's interesting because we have these big numbers and we have these large purchases, and they would probably go long past the end of the Trump administration. So whether China will actually commit to these, it's an open question.